Здорово, дорогие друзья, and welcome to Aflourish Media. My name is Epan Zeche. Today is a bright sunny day in Moscow, Russia, and I'm here in the Park Победа taking a walk, and I was just inspired to talk about something very interesting. So, walking around the Park Победа today made me think about something very interesting. So, and I want to share my thoughts today here and talk to you about what and how I came to understand the Victory Day in Russia. Basically, in every city in Russia, there is a Park Победа, and the Russians hold to heart the Victory Day. So before I came to Russia, I didn't actually know what it was. I was just like every other person, and after living in Russia for 1 or 2 years, I decided to understand what it's all about, the Park Победа, what it's about the Victory Day. Basically, before I thought it was just like the Independence Day in Cameroon. In most African countries, we have Independence Day. Yes, Independence Day. The day where we celebrate the independence of our country from colonizers like France, Germany, and England, the UK. So I thought it was basically the same thing. So that was my very poor knowledge of it. So I decided to dive deep into it, and to understand what is the Victory Day in Russia, what the Russians call Den Победа, and why do they hold it so deep into their heart? Why do they celebrate it every year and make a huge celebration about it? Because of that, I decided to speak to a Russian. And the Russian told me, oh, don't read books. Books don't write the real history. If you want to know the real history, try to talk to someone that lived. Try to talk to people. People will tell you the real history, not in textbooks. You won't find the real history in textbooks. So luckily for me, I had a lot of friends in Russia. And so I spoke to the mother of one of my friends, and she lived through the First World War, and then only after I spoke to her, I understood the real deal behind. No, she didn't live through the First World War. I spoke to her. She was born she was born before the Second World War, and she was a child when it was Second World War, and she remembers what it was like during the Second World War. And so she decided, she told me a lot of things. I asked her a lot of questions. She told me a lot of things. I can't even remember all, but I will try to, during this video, talk about the things she told me about the Second World War, the major things I remember. So I'm just going to take a walk around this park, and as I walk around, I'll be sharing my thoughts around what she told me and what remarked me a lot in what she told me. So as I spoke to her for a long while, and we still speak because she's the mother of one of my friends. We speak regularly, and one of the things she told me was the suffering that they lived through during the Second World War. She told me there's so much suffering, like huge suffering. There wasn't enough food. Like food wasn't really enough. They lived on bread. Basically on bread alone. Look around, this is the Park Победы. What a huge, tall, I don't know how they call it, statue, pyramid in Russian. And it was huge suffering. Like she told me that there was so much suffering. They lived only on bread, and they would bake the bread on their own because all the resources, the government resources were like funneled, or not funneled, how do I say, focused. All the government resources during then, it was still the Soviet Union, all the government resources were sent to the war, to fight the war. So little or nothing was left for social development and all the like. So there was a huge amount of insufficiency in food, and there was enormous, huge suffering. They will have bread, potatoes, which was basically all what they could make for themselves. No import. Then the Soviet Union was also how can I say, was like couldn't import, export anything. So all what they had was just what they could make, and all they could make was just like bread, potatoes, and that's what they'll eat every day. Like morning bread, afternoon potatoes, and so on and so forth, because that's all what they had. It's always available. And as they lived through this time, the suffering was like enormous. That's one of the things I remember. And so when they celebrate this day, this chair is painted. I don't know. Can I sit here? Is the good stain, man? Freshly painted. I guess it's written "Don't sit." Freshly painted, pre-painted for the Victory Day. I don't think I can sit here, so I'll just go down here and sit in the shadow of the trees. So that's one of the things I remembered during I was talking to her about the Victory Day. She told me the experiences, the cold, how all their family members, almost all the males of the family were sent to the war. Like basically, there was practically no man left. In every family, they would take all the men and send or prepare to be sent to the war. And for them, the ladies that were left behind, it was a huge sacrifice, an enormous sacrifice, because all the jobs that were left, the construction jobs that were left behind, the factory jobs, they were done by women. Can you imagine women working in the factories, working in doing the men jobs, the driving of almost the remaining male job that were left were done by the women. So I just came around in the park in a good undershade because the sun is too high, and I'll be talking from here. So basically, she told me that all the men were prepared for the war, or basically sent to the war, and all the jobs that were left that were normally done by the men in the civilian part of the society were done by women. And it was such hardship. And all what the women would do at the job, at the factories, all this was to be sent again to the front to fight the fight against the Germans, the Nazis as they call it. So, and when I was speaking to her, just the emotion, she almost cried sometimes, because just the emotions, like flashbacks was coming back to her head. She's like 80 something years old, this lady, this babushka, as they call it in Russian, babushka. And then you just feel like the flashbacks were so huge, were so intense, the emotion. She almost cried when she was talking to me. And that's when I started understanding like the hardship, why the Russians really celebrate. Go, you can see it, the Russian flag. I'm in the Park Pobeda now. You can see it, some heroes, monuments, huge, tall, standing high, tall. Russians, when they do their stuff, they like doing it very big. But back to the topic. The topic was, so basically this, when after talking to her, I went visiting her for 2 or 3 weeks, and each day at the end of the day we'll sit down to drink chai, and I will ask her questions and she will tell me. And that's when I got the real sense of what it was like Victory Day in Russia. Before that, I just thought it was like an normal independence day, like all African countries had. But far from it. It wasn't just a simple independence day. And then I understood the sacrifice that they did, both men and women. The men were fighting at the front, but the women staying behind were doing a lot of sacrifice far from their loved ones, their husbands, their sons, their brothers. She told me it was a huge sacrifice. Even everyone, even her, I don't know. Fortunately, she didn't have a brother, and she didn't have she was still young then. So she wasn't married. She didn't have a husband. But everyone around who had a husband, a brother, all the sons were prepared to fight. Like they were sent working in the military, one way or the other, cooking or doctors or doing something, but all in the military. And all the jobs in the factory were focused, built, oriented towards providing for the army. Even the food they will harvest in the summer were prepared and sent to the war to be fought during the winter. So she was telling me this, and she was almost crying. She was almost crying, having flashbacks from all these experiences. And that's when I understood the impact, like the real impact of this of the war on the society. Besides that, she told me that the impact I even still felt till today. I felt it today because she said, if you can see, she told me, like, that's why till today there are even less men, less boys, less men in society, in the Russian society, because of this war. Can you imagine after how many years? 75, 60, 80 years gone after the victory, there is still a shortage of men because all the men were sent to the war, fought, dead, something, and this period just caused a huge damage around the Russian society. And all Russians from the east to the west, from Khabarovsk to Bashkortostan, every city were basically sent to fight this war. And that's when I started understanding, yes, that's where it sank into my brain. I started understanding why the Russians, how they see this war, and why they celebrate it so much. And but before that, I couldn't understand. And she would tell me day-to-day stories of the suffering, not only at the front, the corpses that would come from the death of people, but also the hardship, how winter was hard in those days. And she said, thank God, they finally won the war. And when they won, it was still not easy after the victory, because everything had to be reoriented. They had to build back everything from zero, because then everything was focused on war, no social infrastructure, and everything had to be built from zero. And then she was like, and that is only when I understood the real impact of the war. So here's the Parapabedi. I'm just going to walk around and look how the preparations are going on for the victory day. And that's after this talk, like it was, how long was it? I think that was 3 years ago. After talking to this babushka, listening to her stories and sharing her experiences with me, that is when I understood the real deal behind this victory day. So I'm going to go to the top of this monument and see. Here we go on the bloodshed called Park Pabedi, and I'm going to take a walk around and show you how it looks like. Take some pictures and then go back home. And then it's most sunny bright day today, and most people just came out. Today is Sunday, so most people came out to talk, have fun, work with the families, play. A huge square, and you can see the horse and the statue, and there you go to the right, you can see the Moscow city. Of course, the church today is the Orthodox Church, ringing the bells, prayer time. But yeah, let's walk around and show you. So when I understood this, I started respecting the victory day deeper. I started understanding the victory day, started understanding why they love it so much, why they respect it so much, and why they celebrate it. So basically, at the end of the day, this babushka told me that is why the Russians themselves, they hate war. Like they have the memories of war is so deep in their society that they just the sound, just the thought of going to war is not even part of. They hate it, but they hate it. They hate just the thought, even the thought of war, because they remember the suffering that they went through during the Second World War, fighting the Germans, the Nazis, Hitler and his warriors. So, and that's why they basically say, nah, we don't want this to repeat. We can't have this repeat, because the impact was so bad. The suffering, the hardship they went through, winters with no food, struggling to eat, and everything they can provide they send to the war to feed the soldiers. Just the thought of this, none of them likes the sound or the thoughts of having a war. That's what she told me. She told me that she was basically, I wouldn't say it in the camera. She wasn't, but just the memories she had, those she lost, the close ones. It's so hard. You can't understand if you haven't lived through it. So that's why they are so united. That's why they are the society. When you have lived through hardship together, there's nothing that can separate you. That's why the Russians, they have made it in their mind up, and there's no way, there's no changing. Most people think, oh, you can break the Russian society, you can separate them, you can't separate them. The Russians, they can talk bad about the society, they can criticize their society, their presidents, their leaders, but when a foreigner, someone out of the country, starts talking bad about their country, forget. You have no right. Like they are so united. Forget, they can talk about their society, their leadership, their like the negative part of the society. They can do it. They can talk about it, and they like talking about it. Some of them like talking about it. But when it comes to unity, when they have to act together, forget. They are so united. They will stand for one another till the end. Till the end, because that's how they have been built. That's how they have been taught to live, because that's how history forced them to live. So After this experience with this babushka, I now understood that Victory Day in Russia is not just about another Independence Day in one of the African countries. It's more than that. Though we also lost a lot of people fighting for independence against the colonizers. I don't know. In Cameroon, we fought against the British and the French. But it's not the same level of loss. It's not the same level of loss. Can you imagine lacking food, living in the winter, working hard jobs, and all that, sending into war for how many years? Many years. For many years. At the end of the day, that's why they won, because they were united. That's why they won. That's why the 9th of May, the Victory Day in Russia, it's one of the greatest public holidays. One of the greatest public holidays, and one of the best, one of the memorable days that they can't forget. You can say to conclude this video, so basically you can say, if it hadn't been the fight the Russians put against Hitler, today there might have not been any Russia. So all what you can see around, all what they have now, might not have existed if they had not fought and won the Germans, Hitler and his army back in those days. So that's basically the summary. And the fight cost them a lot of people. Basically with blood, the blood of the soldiers, they saved their own country. They're independent. And I'm not sure they're ready to lose it. They are ready to lose it anytime soon. And they will fight anyone that wants to take away this from them. Because the price they pay for this is crazy, it's insane, it's inhumane. At the top of this tall stuff is written "Vi krov'yu svoyo spasli Отечество." With your blood you saved the fatherland.